The morning sun had barely climbed above the rooftops when a trembling hand turned the key in an old, sputtering pickup. Inside sat a man whose life had been defined by struggle, sacrifice, and a kind of quiet resilience that only comes from being broken over and over again. His name was Rayan Holt, a poor single father doing everything in his power to keep his little world from collapsing. But destiny had prepared a twist he never saw coming, a twist that would unfold the moment he stepped out of his truck to help a stranded woman on an empty suburban road, unaware that she was the very judge whose ruling could either destroy him, or save him. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing good even when life is unfair, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness right now. Your support keeps these stories alive. The day had started rough for Rayan. His daughter, 10-year-old Mira Holt, had been coughing since dawn, and though he reassured her with a smile, fear gnawed at him. Medicines cost money. Doctor visits cost more. And Rayan barely earned enough from his construction shifts to keep food on the table. Still, he walked around with the determination of a man who refused to break in front of the child who depended on him. Mira, bright-eyed and gentle, was the only light he had left after her mother passed away 4 years earlier. Raising her alone had given him purpose, even as bills piled up and landlords grew impatient. That morning, after dropping Mira at school, Rayan headed to a courthouse, though not as a visitor or a spectator. He was expected there the next day for a hearing that could cost him the home they lived in. His landlord was pushing for eviction, unwilling to wait any longer for the 2 months of unpaid rent. Rayan had tried everything, extra shifts, borrowing from friends, even selling his grandfather's old tools, but nothing had been enough. Tomorrow was the day a judge would decide their fate. As he drove back toward the city, lost in thoughts of Mira and the looming judgment hanging over him, he spotted a silver car pulled over on the side of the quiet road. The hood was open, steam rising beneath it. A woman stood nearby, her bag on the ground, her hands covering her face in frustration. Something about her posture, exhausted, alone, vulnerable, called to the deepest part of him. He pulled over his old truck without hesitation. His boots touched the warm pavement, and he approached with a polite distance. The woman looked up, startled but relieved. She was in her late 40s, dressed in a simple skirt and blouse, her dark hair tied in a neat bun that was now loosening in the breeze. She had the kind of presence that suggested dignity and strength, but her eyes were clouded with worry. "Everything all right, ma'am?" Rayan asked, keeping his tone gentle. She nodded quickly, though it was obvious things were not all right. "My engine overheated, and my phone is dead. I was heading to a meeting. I don't know what to do." Rayan glanced into the engine. He wasn't a mechanic, but years of fixing up his truck and helping neighbors had taught him enough. "Your coolant line's cracked. You won't be able to drive until it's fixed." Her expression fell. "I can't be late. I really can't." Rayan made a decision without considering the consequences. He told her he'd call a tow for her and offered her a ride to wherever she needed to go. She looked at him, uncertain at first. He didn't blame her, strangers could be dangerous. But something in his sincerity seemed to reassure her. "I'm Rayan," he said. "I'm just trying to help." After a moment, she nodded. "I'm Judge Marissa Vale. And thank you, Mr. Rayan. I appreciate this more than you know." He blinked in surprise. "A judge?" She didn't look intimidating or stern, just human, humble even. He didn't connect the dots. How could he know she was the same judge assigned to his upcoming eviction case? They sat in his truck, its worn-out interior a stark contrast to her polished presence. As he drove, she noticed every detail, his work-worn hands gripping the steering wheel, the cracked seats patched with tape, the child's drawing clipped to the dashboard with the words, "Best Dad," in colorful marker. She asked about his daughter, and though he rarely opened up to anyone, something about her warmth made him speak freely. He told her about Mira, her love for drawing, her cough, her bravery. He spoke of long hours at construction sites, the exhaustion, the guilt of not being able to give her a better life. He didn't mention the eviction. Not because he wanted to hide it, but because he was ashamed. Judge Marissa listened with a growing ache in her chest. She had spent decades seeing people from her courtroom bench, cold profiles on documents, brief stories told through legal arguments. But hearing a father speak with such depth, such sincerity, struck her differently. She had once been a single mother too, long before she became a judge, and she recognized the familiar tremble in his voice, the tremble of someone who had carried too much for too long. When he dropped her off at the courthouse, she thanked him again, but her gratitude felt heavier, deeper. He told her he didn't need anything in return and drove away before she could ask more questions. That night, Rayan worked another late shift, his mind haunted by thoughts of tomorrow. He watched Mira sleep when he got home, her small frame curled under a thin blanket. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, whispering a silent promise that he would protect her, no matter what. The next morning, he stood at the courthouse feeling as though the world rested on his shoulders. He held Myra's little hand, having no one to leave her with. She wore her faded pink jacket, and though she tried to smile, worry lingered in her eyes. When the courtroom door opened and the judge walked in, Ryan's breath caught in his throat. There she was, Judge Marissa Vale. The woman he had helped. The woman who told him about her morning meeting, which now made perfect sense. Their eyes met briefly, and a spark of recognition flashed between them. She maintained her professional composure, but something in her gaze softened. The proceedings began. The landlord's lawyer argued firmly, stating the overdue rent and the months of notices. The landlord sat stiffly, arms crossed, eyes cold. Rayan held Myra's hand tighter as he explained his situation. He spoke of the unstable work hours, the medical expenses, the exhaustion. He didn't make excuses. He simply told the truth. His voice trembled but did not break. Judge Marissa listened intently, watching the man who had gone out of his way to help her, knowing he had been struggling even then but still chose kindness. She studied Mira, who sat bravely beside her father, swinging her legs nervously, clutching a small drawing in her hand, a house with their names written on it. After the closing arguments, the courtroom fell silent. Everyone waited. Judge Marissa folded her hands gently. Considering the circumstances, she said steadily, and the evident effort made by Mr. Holt to fulfill his responsibilities despite hardship, I am ruling for an extension. Mr. Holt will receive additional time to pay the pending rent, during which he cannot be evicted. I expect good faith efforts from both sides. Gasps stirred in the room. The landlord protested, but her decision stood. Ryan's eyes widened in disbelief. Relief washed over him like a wave, and he nearly collapsed under its weight. Mira hugged him tightly, her little arms clinging around his waist. After court adjourned, Judge Marissa approached them quietly in the corridor. Mr. Holt, she said kindly, yesterday you helped a stranger without expecting anything. Today, life simply returned that kindness to you. She didn't mention how deeply his story had struck her, or how his generosity had reminded her of a time when she had struggled alone with her own child.